Making a skid plate is hard. Making a couple of them is even harder, and building a whole bunch of them so you can pay your rent on time this month? Well, it's hard enough that I had to reevaluate my life, question what I was doing, and make a video about it. Hello, my name is Kat, and welcome to Rise Material Research. A few months ago, I decided to quit my job as an automotive technician and start up my very own fabrication and 3D printing business. Since then, I've turned my garage into my very own fabrication shop, complete with a CNC plasma cutter, 3D printers, welders, and even a small testing lab. With everything set up how I wanted it to be, I finally decided to sit down and design my first product. A simple skid plate for the Honda Moto Compacto, which is surprisingly heavy. It was at that point that I realized that I don't have a damn clue what I'm doing. When I first bought my CNC plasma cutter, I had dreams of simply hitting a button and getting a finished part. I learned immediately that was a fucking lie. While the overall shape of these is automatically cut out, I still have to go through and drill the holes, deburr the edges, and add a surface finish. Overall, it takes about 5 minutes, which isn't anything crazy, but for a part that takes 1 minute to cut out, it is quite a bit. But I mean, at least at this point, the skid plate is done, right?
Wrong!
The way these skid plates are designed, they need to be bent in 3 specific places. Once in the front in order to add a lip, and twice in the middle in order to create an offset so that it clears the body panels. Normally, this wouldn't be too huge of an issue. Bend 10 degrees here, flip, and bend another 10 degrees. But unfortunately for me, I'm fighting something which I kinda never expected. Myself. While this bender is overall pretty decent, the owner and operator can only be described as an absolute goblin. Sometimes I bend these too much, sometimes I don't bend them enough, and while trial and error usually gets me by, in this case, I need these to be a lot more consistent. That's where these come in. These are brake stops. They're made from 5mm stainless steel plate with 3/8 stainless steel bolts TIG welded into place. You simply mount them to your press arms, find your desired height, slide them up, and clamp them down. Now you have a repeatable stopping point to make consistent bends every time. In fact, this was such a good idea that, as you can see, I've already made quite a few of these so I can sell them and pay for my rent. But there's only one issue with that. In my infinite wisdom, I fully trusted my design skills, which, looking back on it, it can only be described as really fucking dumb. Maybe it was confidence, maybe it was blind stupidity, but when the time came to put them to use, I realized my mistakes. Yep, so it turns out I'm a dumbass and I made a bunch of these, and the entire load basically goes on these 2 single points, which is, not good. At this point, I promptly stopped what I was doing, left the shop, and had what I thought was a mental breakdown. But as it turns out, it was a mental breakthrough. So I got off my ass and wrote this script. But what now? Well, we get back to work. Alright, so first thing to do is make a new set of brake stops. I've already cut out 1 pair just to test it and make damn sure that this design works, and they look good. So we're gonna make another 3 pairs. After some quick cleanup, these worked a lot better at dispersing the load, and now that I'm able to make consistent bends, let's cut out a few more skid plate blanks and give it another shot. So before, I was cutting with nitrogen and it made for some really nice cuts, but this time I cut them with oxygen and honestly, the edge quality is not that bad. Cleaning these up, as mentioned before, is as simple as drilling the holes, this time with the vise clamp down, deburring the edge with the countersink, and sanding the surface to give it a consistent finish. Now for the moment of truth. The first 2 bends need to be equal, so I'll make 1 bend at 7 degrees, flip it over, and make another bend at 7.5 degrees. After correcting our mistake, we'll move over to the front and make a bend at 12 degrees in order to add a lip. And with everything looking good, we can go over and get it installed. Disassembling the Moto Compacto is honestly a pain in the ass, but after removing the screws and popping the clips, the job is pretty easy. Basically, all we need to do is remove the bolts holding on the foot pegs, drill the holes we forgot, and then attach our skid plate using the foot peg bolts. And now that that's on, we can lose 1 last piece of hardware and reassemble it all. So, with the skid plate built and installed, how did it come out? Well, it was a complete failure, but maybe not in the way you think. Overall, the skid plate does its job just fine, but the experience of actually making them has taught me a lot about the process, and honestly, I think I can make them better if I try again and make some changes. For example, the material. While it's easy to cut, bending aluminum is another story, especially because after 30 degrees it tends to go like the slip at the front. Originally, it was supposed to be 45 degrees, but it had to be halved after I broke like 3 skid plates. Also, speaking of bending, those press stops we made, they just didn't work. Great idea, but a 20-ton press really doesn't care if you try to stop it. I mean, hell, even the bends didn't really need to be made, since it turns out the bushings give us all the spacing we need. This project was honestly riddled with so many fuck-ups and failures that it's hard to list them all. But if I had to look at them as lessons learned, I think one of the main ones is that the bender is evil and it definitely should not be trusted. But above that is a more important lesson. And that is the simple fact that making skid plates is surprisingly hard. Bullshit!